Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 51. 51, Bernie Williams' number for the Sports Consiglieres Podcast. We just completed our 50th show. Not to be people impressed, but I'm your host, Jim Whalen. Along with me is my buddy, my pal, my friend, my consigliere, the coach of the Blue Devils flag football, girls flag football. He's sporting the sweatshirt today. Jerry
That's
Callow.
correct.
Jerry, how you doing on this fine day?
Excellent, Jimmy. Number 51.
No,
Number 51 as in
let's
Abdul Carter.
let's keep. Hey, there you go. Good call. Good call. But
Bernie was obviously Bernie's the first choice, but
yeah, but how was your week last? We took a week off. You had your daughter graduating, your son had his prom, so it was very busy in the household. So all
it was
good
all
stuff.
good. She graduated from Yankee Stadium, so
All right. So how was
very
that?
nice. I was trying to get onto the field, it just wouldn't work. It
hopefully
was
not
very
streak.
nice.
Hopefully not streaking. So hopefully
No,
you
no
weren't getting.
streaking. Those days are long gone.
Yeah, but I took my son out, my brother. We went out to Cleveland, so
Nice.
we checked out a Guardians game. They beat the Brewers 1-0 with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and conversely went to the Christmas Story house. So they have
That
it.
is that is on my bucket list.
That is on your bucket list. Not only that, Jerry, if you go out there, you can rent a bunny costume for $10 across the street.
Interesting.
And again, and they have tours. We didn't do the tour, but we did go out there. Cleveland. It was. We were there the night that they lost to the Pacers, but good city, a very walkable city. But one thing I will say about the Guardians, though, they're going to be a tough out with their two closers, Gaddis and the closer, because we sat behind home plate. I mean, there was really nobody in the stadium there. I guess everybody was concentrated on the Cavs, but their closer was that Clase or Klaus or whatever his name is. He throws gas, and Gaddis was, he definitely is. It's a 1-2 punch that reminds me of Mariano Wetland. But all in all, returning to baseball, Yankees Subway Series. Judge looks like he's on MVP season. What was your thought? You're watching the games this weekend. What was your thought?
Yeah, so I mean, it was unfortunately you're out in Cleveland for a disappointing end to the Cavaliers season. I'm a big fan of Kenny Atkinson. Disappointing end, but I thought he really did a good job this year. Pacers are tough. Pacers played well. Atkinson, I think he got royally screwed by the Nets. They ran him out of town. I'm not surprised, that he went on to have success elsewhere. So, tough ending, being the number one seed. Now it brings us to the old school matchup, if you will, of the Pacers and the New York Knickerbockers, which begins Wednesday at the Garden. Very unfortunate situation, obviously, with Tatum. You never want to see that. He's going to miss, obviously, a good part of next year. It's very difficult it's always difficult to lose as the higher seed, and let alone, you lost him. And then it turns out that Jaylen Brown also tore his meniscus after the series. With that being said, I thought the night the Knicks clinched, it was the best game they played all series. The cat showed up. He was enthused. He was motivated. And, again, that leads them, into a very difficult series against the Pacers. I think it's good for basketball. There's going to be a lot of reflecting about those old battles, Reggie Miller, Ewing, Rick Smits, the Davis brothers, as Donnie Walsh used to call them. And, it's going to be very, very exciting. As we know, now let's kind of switch that, because the Knicks took us into a very exciting time for New York sports. Not only did we have Yankees, Mets, I know people are going to be happy to hear we also had Red Bulls, New York City FC on
Yes.
Saturday, which was held at Citi Field. The Red Bulls forgot that they were playing a game. New York City won 2-0. So that was a little, in the Calla household, that was a little, the only negative mark for the weekend. The Yankees took 2 out of 3. Like you said, Judge is on fire. Soto went 1 for 2 in the series. And, not for anything, Jimmy. SNY, oh, the Yankee fans, they turned their back on it. Listen, even Soto knew coming into the series. It comes with the territory. It's New York. He's going to get booed. They turn their back on him. It is what it is. It's all in part of doing business. Not many people went from go from the Yankees to the Mets. Usually it's the other way around, and the fans basically booed the guy. He actually said before the series started, it's 50,000 to 1. It's not a terrible series. I mean, he was 1 for 10, like I said. Yesterday, Yankees won 8-2. The first three hitters in the Met lineup had zero hits, culminating with a Loizaga strikeout of Lindor. And let me tell you, it's a blessing to get him back. He looked sharp. I thought he was, he pitched very, very well. He had a walk. He got into minor trouble. He pitched out of it with the strikeout Lindor. And, he was a welcome sight for a bullpen that's been, pretty taxed as, Aaron Boone tries to keep the rotation together. Again, Max Fried, I'm laughing this morning. I'm listening, and people are like, he wasn't the sharpest. It wasn't his sharpest outing, and that's how spoiled we are with Max Fried. 6 innings, 3 hits. It wasn't his best stuff. He came out of the game in a 2-2 tie. The bullpen held it together. Devin Williams had a hitless and scoreless inning. He wound up getting.
Yeah, he struck out the side. So I mean, he looked good.
So, I mean, hopefully that is a boost for him. Obviously, we're going to need him going forward, and I still think that you're talking about 1-2 punches as closers, as strong relievers late in games. I still think him and Luke Weaver, are going to be a formidable 1-2 punch going down. But the story of the night, if you will, is Cody Bellinger is absolutely on fire lately.
13 game hitting streak. So I mean,
believable. And again, people were ready to hit the panic button. He started off slow, and again, like you said, he's the hottest hitter in baseball, and boy, could the lineup use him now. I mean, Goldschmidt is having an unbelievable year. If you would have told me that his average would be here and his power numbers would be here, the guy is just a good all around, veteran baseball hitter. He's keeping things simple. His approach is simplified, which is hitting to all fields. He's not worried about, his power numbers. Judge is really all over the place offensively, solid in just about every category. And, who would have thought that, Carlos Rodon would have woke up this year, which is a pleasant surprise, if you will. And when I say woke up, he's, pitching to a level that, we thought we were getting him when he was originally signed and I think you have to give it to Boone. I know people aren't really too impressed overall with the division. Teams are struggling. Baltimore just fired their manager. But at the end of the day, he's keeping it together, with a mishmash of what's gone on in the starting rotation. Cole's out for the year, as everyone knows. Gil has begun to throw. Schmidt came back, and, Stroman has had a minor setback or two. So, again, I think you have to give it to Boone. If you're asking me any negative that I took from the weekend, I was just, and I know it might be harsh, just very disappointed in Volpe yesterday. I'm really not choked up about him batting fifth. I know that's going to get into an analytics thing with a, righty in between lefties and all sorts of things. But, I mean, again, they really had a chance earlier to blow it open. He swung at 2 balls. Yeah. And, he's struggling, and I don't think hitting him fifth is ideal for him to come out of a slump. Drop him in the order. We hope that he could find his way, and we'll go from there. Third base right now, with Peraza batting around 125 is the weakest on the field. LeMahieu came back, got a few hits, plugged him in on second, after Cabrera fracturing his ankle. And, ultimately the Yankees took 2 out of 3. I thought it was good for the city. You have not even at Memorial Day, you have both teams with good records in first place, and that's hopefully that's not the last we heard of the Mets, moving forward. And, it's great for the city. Like I said, we went from, a successful Knicks, right into the Subway Series. And I know we had the New York Derby, which I know some of our listeners don't want me to talk about, which is my beloved Red Bulls dropping a 2-0 loss to the Smurfs, as we call them, at Citi Field. So,
well, listen, you unpacked a lot there. I think the show's done there, Jerry. So I think that you packed everything in 10 minutes. So I mean, you really
that's so we could
yeah,
punch out now.
exactly. Yeah, this episode's in the can, but my takeaway was that first of all, with the Knicks, I turned the game on and the game was a runaway. I think, the cat showed up. He wasn't playing well. I think that, but collectively, I think the team played well. Just turn into the Yankees Mets. I mean, it's nice to see LeMahieu back. I mean, they brought him back easy. He didn't have a chance to really have a spring training, so they brought him back easy. It was nice to see him hit a home run. Is good on defense. Is very steady. Goldschmidt, timely hitting. Like last night, he hit a ball, it broke the game open, and Bellinger's swinging the bat great. So really, really swinging the bat great. And then what can you say? I think a lot has to go with Cashman and his team. First off, Weaver, they picked him off. 2 years ago, they put him on waivers when the season was done, and they signed him for $2 million last year, $2.5 million this year, and he's a closer. I mean, man, he looks good. And Williams, I think, was his first good outing of the year. Playing in New York, he going from Milwaukee, playing in New York. Some players can't make that adjustment, but he did. Goldschmidt, as an older player, really is hitting to all fields. Really. Offensively having a great series. So I like what the Yankees are doing. As far as the Mets go, I mean, they, with all their injuries, they had the lowest ERA, I think, in the major league, and the Yankees had the highest batting average. So it was good. It was a good. It was a good series and good atmosphere for Yankee Stadium. It was like a playoff atmosphere. So I mean, with the Soto, I think after the first game, everybody kind of got out of their system. But I think defensively, the Mets, 2-2 with Alonso throwing that ball, and it really. It just came down to a bad play. I mean, I think he was looking at the runner. He threw the ball right at the runner. But I mean, I think the Yankees increased their speed. They got rid of Torres and somebody, but the influx of players they have now are a lot quicker. So I think that was probably an off-season strategy. But as far as pitching, I think they're stacking arms. They're having a lot of these spot starters here and there, which is carrying them through the season. So, I mean, as of right now, you mentioned a little bit earlier, they might be the best car in a junkyard, but right now they're in first place going into Memorial Day. So I like what I see from the Yankees, and it looks like they're starting to trend in certain ways, which I like. So,
yeah, I mean, like you mentioned it, you talking about them, Cashman. And again, these last few years, and it's been more than a few years, nobody's been more, name a GM that's really been more criticized, than Cashman, not doing enough, not spending enough, not making enough moves, if you will, standing pat, and ultimately, people forget he lost Soto. And whether this was reality or the perception, I should say, was like, when they lost Soto, bang, he got going, and Max Fried was signed before you know it, and they pivoted, arguably losing, one of the game's best players, based on his age right now, and I think that they did a great job. I would probably be in the minority. I know more people wanted a bigger splash at third base. But again, you look at overall, no Soto equaled, no Goldschmidt, equaled Goldschmidt. It would, if they were to re-sign Soto, right? They don't make that trade. They keep Cortez, right? They don't trade a lefty, so you don't get Devin Williams. I know, now he struggled, but now he's coming around, and he has the history, and you hope he maintains what he did yesterday. But ultimately, they got Goldschmidt, they got Bellinger. But Max Fried was the top get, if you will. And man, I mean, he should be arguably 10-0. You talk about a start, and I like watching him. I like his mannerisms, if you will, and I really enjoy watching him pitch. And he's going to try to defeat you with his mind when he can bring velocity. I mean, that curveball, woof. I mean, he's been on. So, I mean, you got to give it to Cashman. You know, you look at the team right now. You want to say LeMahieu coming back. He stays healthy. That improves you at second base. You know, third base is their weakest position on the diamond. And that's why, you know, I know the Yankees are trying to downplay it now. But, you know, ultimately, that's why Ben Rice has been taking ground balls at third base. You know, I don't think they're going to make a splash, if you will, come the trade deadline. And I know that the trade deadline seems like eons away, but I think if they're going to make a splash at the trade deadline, they'll go for another arm. And I still think a third base candidate will emerge. I mean, right now they got Peraza. He's batting, I think, 127, 125-ish, if you will. But, you know, what happens with Ben Rice? I mean, I know they're downplaying, and he's, like I said, he's been taking grounders. I don't think that's, just him looking to kill some time pre-game. You know, we'll see going down the stretch. Like you said, first place as we're heading into Memorial Day weekend, off day today. They got the Texas Rangers tomorrow. So,
and they got a big series with Boston coming up, early June. So I think it's Yogi Berra bobblehead day, right? First 18,000. They were advertising
Yogi Berra in a naval uniform.
Yes, correct.
Day.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes. So, and then if you ever watched that documentary, it was, I think his granddaughter did it. He was collecting the bodies at D-Day. He never really, his one son, he said he never really talked about it. So, thank you for your service for, especially on the eve of Memorial Day weekend for Yogi Berra. But, you talk about Cody Bellinger, Max Fried, sorry, $218 million contract. And I turn on the Mets broadcast on Friday, and one thing they said about Rodon, which I thought was interesting, Ron Darling said that Rodon was working with Andy Pettit over the offseason and for off-speed pitch, and I think that really helped him out. He's developing 4 different pitches, so he's looking really good. But I like what I see from Rodon. But and he also criticized the one reliever, De Los Santos, in the one game. How come he's throwing off speed pitch when they had to bring Weaver in? Go after the pitcher, and then go after the hitter. So he was critical. So I mean, that's interesting to hear that. One thing good about being a Yankee is that you can work with an Andy Pettit, who crafty lefty, who was hopefully one day in Hall of Famer. But it was nice to see, and taking 2 games from the Mets is always good. I think they're playing them in a couple more weeks at Citi Field, so it'll be interesting. So, but they said they're in first place. Boston doesn't seem like they can get too much traction. I know they put Walker Buehler on the IR. So I like where the Yankees are, and I agree with you. They're probably going to make a couple transactions. An arm always helps, and for third base, I don't think they really need an offensive person. They just really seem somebody just to play good defense and hit around the Mendoza line. They really don't need the offense, with Judge being on a tear and Goldschmidt and Bellinger looking like they're a 1-2-3 punch.
No, absolutely. And again, like you said, I mean, you want to put it in New York sports terms, right? You have there's a lot of renewed enthusiasm with the Giants. There's a lot of renewed enthusiasm with the Jets. There's a lot of enthusiasm for obvious reasons with the Yankees, the Mets, and the Knicks. Unfortunately, the Nets didn't wind up where they wanted to with the lottery balls. That's what happens. The ping pong balls sometimes do funny things, but miraculously, Dallas came out with the top pick. Wink, wink, as most people are saying. Hockey. The Rangers are a disaster, the Islanders. But overall, I think as we head, into the summer, which obviously Memorial Day for most of us signifies the summer arriving, I should say, that, in the New York sports land, the NFL and MLB, those 4 teams, there's going to be a lot of juice. Obviously the Jets kind of, if you will, were kind of in the background with everything the Giants did with, drafting Carter and Dart. But, I like what some of the things you're hearing out of Aaron Glenn. They're very, very, comfortable, it seems, heading into the season with Fields. I think Fields got a bad rap in Pittsburgh. I think he got even a worse rap in Chicago. So it should be interesting. And, we've talked about it. The Giants, there's a lot of excitement with Dart. There's a lot of positive things coming out, since he's been, in these workouts. And again, I'm still going to go with this. All the excitement with Dart. And I still think Wilson's going to have a good year. It's going to be a difficult schedule, as we talked about, and we will definitely dive into this going forward. But, it's a nice time right now to be a New York sports fan, as Memorial Day gets closer and closer these next few days.
There's a lot of optimism, and then but the Giants do have the worst,
it's unbelievable,
hardest schedule in football. So, I mean, I think you called that early on who they're going to play. I mean, I think they open up with the Commanders, and then
they actually have, besides being the computer generated, most difficult schedule, their first 4 games is by far worse than any other teams. They're at Washington, they're at Dallas, they have the Chiefs on Sunday night, and then they have Chargers. So those 4 teams combined last year, that, somebody the other day said to me, fooling around, like, 2-2. I said, hey, listen, 2-2, I'd sign up for that right now.
Yeah. And then I think the Chiefs is the first home game too. So that'll be interesting.
In prime time, which never usually bodes well for the Giants.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been the story of the draft. I think we talked about this about the Giants, and the Jets is really, they haven't really too much after Rodgers left. They're really the kind of this. And listen, I like Fields. I agree with you. I don't think he got a fair shake in Pittsburgh. I mean, Wilson seems like he's embraced in New York. He's at Yankee Stadium. He's at the Knicks game. So taking his kids around to meet Judge. So it looks like Wilson is, loving the New York state of mind. So I think that was a good signing by Joe Shane. I think we both agree with that. So, I'm only optimistic, like you said, in the New York sports scene. But just turn it to the Knicks. I didn't think Indiana would beat Cleveland. Like you said, Cleveland, they won 61, 62 games in the regular season, but they stole game 2 away. I don't know if it was coaching or flat, but Cleveland just looked bad in that series, or either that or Indianapolis looked that good. But Halliburton, he's the real deal. They got a lot of shooters outside. I think the Knicks and the Pacers kind of mirror themselves as the same team. Now, a lot of good outside shooters that can penetrate, not really have a dominant big man, but I think that they mirror each other. So I think it's going to be a good series. So what was your take on Knicks and Pacers coming up?
I like the Knicks going into the series. I'm very cautious. And when I say that, because there's a lot of people that are a little gaga. Oh, well, Cleveland was the 1 seed. We have home court advantage now. My approach, longtime Knicks fan, is I'm very cautious. It's obviously been a very long time since they've been to the Eastern Conference Finals. There's a long way to go. You have the Pacers. They are built relatively the same way, if you will. And you have somebody that I always admired in the NBA, and that's Rick Carlisle.
Yep.
Rick Carlisle's been around. He won a championship with Dallas. He's been through a lot of the wars. He's a local guy way back when. And, the Knicks are going to have this is a typical Knick Pacers series. It's not going to matter who has home court because, to be honest with you, the Knicks have been playing better away from the Garden. Doesn't matter what seed you are. This is Knicks Pacers. I expect to see a lot of the things that I saw in the previous round, Knicks Boston. I think it's going to be a physical series. It's going to remind us of the good old days, if you will. And, again, if the Cat can show up, play consistently, Hart has become such a wonderful story. And, it's unbelievable. I really think because there is nobody thought they were going to beat Boston. And that started, if you look at the Boston series, I mean, if you would have told me in the first 2 games they would have came back from those type of deficits. I mean, it's an unbelievable story for them to even get by Boston, even without Tatum. And again, you want to say they're playing with house money. Is this quote unquote a better path to get? Nobody had them going through Boston. Yeah, but you still got to play the Pacers, and like you said, there's nobody that thought that Cleveland was going to win one game. If you would have told me Cleveland was going to win one game, I wouldn't have believed you.
What, Cleveland or Indianapolis?
No, in that series.
Oh, yeah, they I don't know. They look bad. They're taking too many shots or missing a lot of shots. I don't know.
Before what I'm saying is before the series, did you think that series was going to end the way it did?
No, I thought Cleveland.
No.
I mean, listen.
I thought Cleveland would have won, but I thought Cleveland would have been pushed to the brink, but would have still won.
Yeah, I thought the body of work that Cleveland would have. I mean, they're playing well. Listen, look at the season they had. They're playing well, like you said, and their coach is a great coach. I was surprised. I was surprised at the outcome, but I guess that's why they play the games. But are you surprised? I'm a big Cat fan. I think that he played well. I'm glad he's in New York. Are you surprised on the trade how well Randall's playing in Minnesota? Are you surprised at that? Was it maybe the pressure coming off in New York? But what was your take on Randall going in Minnesota?
No, I mean, I think it was long overdue for him to go away from the Knicks, to get away from the Knicks. Personally, I was never a big Randall guy. I mean, I just thought that he left just too much to be desired defensively. And I think anybody that's followed Thibodeau's career knew that, I don't want to give him the term that they give certain players. He's not a winning player. He's not a Thibodeau guy. So you kind of knew, as time went on that, at the first opportunity that they could get. And to me, that was a great trade. It was a no-brainer. He needed the do-over. Listen, the guy can score. I particularly thought that his effort on the defensive end had a lot to be desired. And I don't think too many people lost any tears when he was sent out of town.
Well, absolutely. And I think that he got a rebirth, so to speak, with the Knicks. I think that
he did.
We had a conversation, I think, before we started the podcast. I think they reached out to Calipari and asked him what kind of a player he was before they signed Randall with Thibodeau. And then, he really, he was a placeholder for a while, but I agree with you. I think he needed to change the scenery, but I think that it's a nice fit for Minnesota. I'd hate to see DiVincenzo go too, break up the Nova Knicks, but bringing Towns back. I think Towns is definitely a generational talent, and then I think that you had to make that trade, and he made the team better. He made the team better.
Absolutely, Jersey guy.
Yeah, and I think if you probably look at him, he's a voice in the locker room. But you're looking at the Nova Knicks. I mean, I watch Brunson a lot in Villanova, and I'm surprised he went in the second round. But I guess having him face up against Jaylen Brown, I guess he's a little bit smaller, and that's why he probably dropped the second round when Dallas drafted him. But I would not prophesize how good Bridges and Hart are as a pro. I mean, good players at Villanova. But man, I mean, they're solid. Their game is solid. All three of them are solid, and Brunson's handle is. I mean, the way he controls the game, controls the tempo. That's it's as a fan, it's a pleasure to watch.
No, absolutely, and like you said, I think what happens is you just don't have that traditional 4 years of watching these guys develop. And that's the thing. I mean, guys come out early all the time. You mentioned Randall earlier. He got a rebirth with the Knicks, but you have to remember, right? He was 18 years old, right, playing for the Los Angeles Lakers. Those are still developmental years. And that's the thing. I mean, these guys, they come into the league. Very few people are coming in, 18, 19, and making that much of an impact, right away. And you look at the Nova guys. I mean, listen, when they signed Brunson for that contract, I was like, oof. I was like, wow. But, It's a great story. They're a highly likable team, and they play well together. The cat fit in nice, and I just like everything about it, and that goes all the way to the end of the bench, having a guy like PJ Tucker, as just the voice of reason. He's basically paid to sit there all game, but like a lot of the players will tell you, he's made such an impact, in that culture, in that locker room. He's 40 years old now. He's a true professional basketball player who is not afraid, based on his track record, right, to hold people accountable. And that's what he's done this year. When maybe when the cat goes awry, these younger guys, he's holding them accountable. And that's what he's doing.
Well, what's your prediction?
And I love seeing him come in the other night at the end of the game. He looked like he was ready, for some bar league basketball.
So what's your prediction? I think it goes 7. I think the Knicks at 7. That's
You're going to go Knicks in 7?
Yeah.
I'll go Knicks in 6.
Just
to be different.
Okay. Well, sorry to steal your thunder, but have you watched anything recently? I watched that the shooting guards with Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenden. Did you happen to check that out? That was on Netflix. It's on one of those Untold series, which I like. It's on, but that was a pretty interesting story. Talk about somebody from Los Angeles. They interviewed Javaris Crittenden, and when they brought the guns in the locker room, that was it. So, have you watched anything good lately?
I saw a few clips of that. I mean, Gilbert Arenas is very entertaining, and ultimately too. I mean, he lost his mind a little bit there, but he had a great story, right? I mean, really didn't have much of a high school career, right? And nobody ever thought a guy like that was going to go. And you got to remember, for those few years, he did light it up. But the one thing that I saw that kind of piqued my interest, and to get back to the baseball theme, they had something come out recently about the '84 Padres. And if you remember, the '84 Padres,
sure.
they lost to the Tigers in the World Series. But one of their more interesting moments that year is they had several managers, if you will. Dick Williams was the manager, and then they had several people get ejected. They had a very entertaining brawl against the Atlanta Braves, and they came out with a short 45-minute. It's on YouTube. I didn't get a chance to watch it yet, but it really goes to show you that and again, people say, you look at the Padres, the history of the Padres. It wasn't the greatest team, but they were a good team. They had a lot of good veterans on that team. You had Garvey at first, Nettles at third. You had Terry Kennedy on that team, and you had Goose Gossage. You had Ed Whitson, Eric Shaw. There was some Craig Lefferts. There was some entertaining players. Alan Wiggins, Tony Gwynn, of course, a very young Tony Gwynn. And apparently, it gets into a lot of the shenanigans that were going in. I always love stories like this.
Yeah. Well,
the locker room shenanigans.
I'm going to check that out because the Padres. That's when they had the Padre. I don't know what the mascot is called, but they actually had the brown uniforms, the brown hat.
So they had the San Diego Chicken.
Yeah, so San Diego Chicken. So, but anyway, Jerry, listen, it was a good week in the Calla household. We're back in the studio, so it's nice to be back. Episode 51. You have any parting words coming up?
No, the only parting words I have is, again, we covered a lot. We covered some Knicks, but we covered the Yankees and Mets. And going forward, this is something that we talked about. You had the big news in baseball about Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson getting reinstated. And next episode, that's something that we're going to explore in great detail. What does it mean? I think talking to several people, there is a lot of misinformation out there. And going forward, our goal, if you will, is to kind of have people come on, set the record straight. Joe Jackson, I think everybody our age has formed an opinion of him based on Ray Liotta playing him in Field of Dreams. And then, of course, 8 Men Out. which was a really, really good movie. And there's varying takes on Jackson's involvement in the Black Sox scandal and everything that went on with Arnold Rothstein and everything. So that's something that my parting shot is, to our guests, is that something we're going to explore in great detail going forward.
Just staying on that topic, are you surprised that Manfred did what he did with Rose? I mean, everybody said that when Rose dies, he'll probably be reinstated.
Pete said it himself.
Yeah. So
yeah, Pete said it himself. I mean, people are going to say they didn't want to give Rose the satisfaction, while he was alive, and one area of this, besides their cases, if you will, one area of this, it doesn't automatically mean they're going to get elected. They're reinstated.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
on a ballot.
It doesn't mean that the whole
people have to vote for them, or people are going to be, now there's the first opportunity that people are going to vote for them, but are they going to be on that list, if you will, where they're going to hover and eventually, be removed?
Now, can you say that for the steroid players like a Barry Bonds? You think that something?
I mean, we without getting into this now, I mean, this is something I think we should really delve in. But to answer the question, I just think, and I'm probably in the minority here, Major League Baseball needs to do something, because every time the Hall of Fame comes up, right, it's always going to be a distraction. Okay, certain players were Hall of Famers before the quote-unquote steroid era, and I think, what's the solution? You put them in. There's an asterisk, whatever. But I think for the game itself to move forward, you have to move past this. And I think certain Clemens, Bonds, A-Rod, they were Hall of Famers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bonds was a 30.
Put them in, distraction goes away.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll delve in that. Something to think about.
Well, that's something forward. That's a little crumb, if you will, for our viewers.
Yeah, but I was glad to see that Manfred did that. But who knows? There's no guarantee. And I guess the word is that you can't be banned if you're a living player. So once you pass away, that gets from Rule 21, I guess, of the Major League Baseball. But anyway, Jerry, let's take two. Let's episode 51. You want to take this one home, and I'd like to thank.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I hope everybody enjoyed.
Let me just
the Subway series.
Let me just give a shout out to our producer, Dave Sturcio, Chop Sports Media, who had a great weekend calling up in Poughkeepsie, New York. I believe he was ringside calling ACW. So shout out to Dave, who always helps us out every episode. But anyway, I'll pass it back along to you, Jerry.
And listen, Dave, just to add to that, Dave's big time now. I saw him hanging out with Eric Bischoff.
Yep.
Who was the biggest, one of my favorite people all time in wrestling, coming up with the whole NWO concept, which was absolutely phenomenal for wrestling.
That's just Easy E is how I refer to him.
Easy E.
Yeah, there you go.
Listen, before he was Eric. Now Dave is on those terms with him.
But that's good stuff, Dave. Though I mean, very good stuff.
Absolutely, NWO for life. But anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed the Subway series. Like we said, we'll be talking about Shoeless Joe Jackson and Pete Rose in a future episode. And I know everybody will be focusing on game 1 of Knicks Pacers Wednesday night. But for all my true diehard MLS soccer fans, Wednesday at Sports Illustrated Stadium, New York Red Bulls, FC Dallas, round of 16, U.S. Open Cup. Take care. Jimmy, great job as always. Dave, thank you. We'll see everybody next time. Thanks.
All right, Jerry. Be well.
Take care.